I'm Kym Clift. I'm the CEO of Tri-State Health. I've actually been in healthcare for 30 years. I started and spent most of my career in revenue cycle. Some familiar faces here, but it's been a while since I've been to an HFMA meeting. About 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to move to the operations side through sponsorship. So this is probably a good conversation for me. And that kind of paved my way into my current CEO role. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Tri-State Health is an independent healthcare system that's located in southeast corner of Washington State.
Hi, I'm Terri Meier. I'm currently the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Revenue Cycle for the University of Arkansas for Medical Science. Like OHSU, we're the only medical school in the state of Arkansas. I've been in healthcare for over 43 years and exclusively with Revenue Cycle.
Good afternoon, I'm Lucy Dennis. I am currently the Vice President of Operations at St. Luke's, which is an Idaho-based not-for-profit healthcare system. I oversee the medical group, which is about, I think on any given day we've got about 6,000 employees, 1,500 physicians, 60 to 70 specialties based on how you count, and about 300 sites. I have been in healthcare my entire career. I started as a clinical dietitian working in the PICU and NICU in New York. Fun fact, my first day on the job was 9/11, right outside of New York City, and I thought, is this how all of healthcare entry is? And so always harken back to just the day of remembrance that we just had.
I was just going to say something and now I forget what I was going to say. We decided to, what I wanted to say was we are inviting questions along the way. So if anybody would like more information about something that somebody has said or would like to ask something, a follow-up question, please feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to pay attention to the room and get those questions answered. So our first question for our group is, can you share a moment in your career? No, actually, our first order of business is to distinguish between mentorship and sponsorship, which is really what this topic is about. And I think the most efficient way to sum it up is that mentorship is providing guidance and support for skill development, while sponsorship is using one's influence to advocate for somebody in support or advancement of opportunities. So if you think about talking with somebody is mentorship and talking about somebody is sponsorship. That's probably the cleanest way to delineate those two. So our first question is, can you share a moment in your career when mentorship or sponsorship made the biggest difference for you as a leader in healthcare? And this is going to be to everybody.
For me, prior to the job that I'm in currently, I worked for a health system based out of Corvallis, Oregon. It was a 5-hospital system. And I was serving as their VP of Revenue Cycle. And I had served as a VP or a senior VP or assistant VP of Revenue Cycle for Peace Health before that, and then a EMS national provider. And so I kind of felt like I was topped out, once you're a VP, unless there's a chief of revenue cycle or you have the skills to go on to a CFO, you're kind of at your ceiling. And so I was serving in that role as their VP of revenue cycle, and the CEO of the large flagship hospital in Corvallis approached me, and she was struggling in some of her areas of operations for the hospital there, and she had worked with me on some projects and she liked how I led people and projects. And so she asked me if I had ever considered moving into operations. And I had thought about it over the years. And in fact, when I was at Peace Health, the imaging director was hiring for a manager. And he asked me if I would consider the job. And I said, I'm not a radiologist. Or I'm not an imaging tech and I don't have any experience clinically. And he said, well, that doesn't matter. And that was a little bit eye-opening for me. And so when I was given the opportunity by that CEO to serve as first their VP of operations and then their COO for their hospital, I kind of jumped at it, and that really is what paved the path for me to then move into the position of a hospital CEO.
Okay. For me, I left my revenue cycle leadership job at Stanford and took a leap and went to UC San Diego Health to build their single billing office. It was something that they were trying to do for about 10 years, and decided, when in your career, and I'm an older adult, do you get the opportunity to go to a pretty prestigious organization and create a department from scratch, from the ground up, build the technology, create the culture, hire the team. So I leapt at the opportunity. When I started out with nothing, so the whole operation was outsourced. So I was tasked with bringing it back in-house. In hiring the team members, there was one individual, going through the hiring process and asking the questions and things, and from a non-traditional perspective, it kind of hit all the boxes for the conversation today. That's kind of why I picked this one. But I hired a gal whose prior experience was a dental hygienist to be part of my customer service. UC San Diego wanted to leverage the patient financial experience as their differentiating factor, between them and, there's lots of competing hospitals in the area down there, Scripps and Sharp, and, it's pretty competitive. So I hired this gal, and for reasons not of her technical experience, but she just seemed to me to be just so hungry to learn, and somebody that I thought that I could mentor and eventually sponsor to rise up in the organization. Along the way, she came in as a customer service rep. We had an opportunity to get her, into a coordinator job and then a supervisor job, and along the way it was, teaching her, the technical part of the job. And UC San Diego's a union environment, kind of like OHSU. Well, we're the same local down there. Same union, just a different local, and that comes again with a whole set of challenges. But just building up her confidence and things. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is that, and I think it was Anna that said, I know I was writing notes as people were saying, so I know Haley said, one of the things she looks for is people to get showing potential. I think it was Anna that said that she knew she's done a good job if she could go to Africa or something and leave for 2 weeks, and then everything would run appropriately. It was about over a 5-year period of time in which I worked with this individual to get her to that level. And then from a sponsorship perspective, when I decided to leave UCSD and go to Arkansas, I had the unique opportunity to advocate for this individual to take on my role as I was leaving the organization. And eventually helped her through, navigating that path. I think, it started with interviews, and then the position got put on hold. And so it was a couple years after, or about a year and a half after I was at Arkansas, that she actually eventually ended up getting the position. But I think just to see some, to mold somebody in such a way that I could leave UCSD and know that it's being taken care of. And the employees that I had there are being taken care of. We built it, like that family. I know there was somebody that said about, that family kind of culture thing, And, you know, one of the toughest things deciding to leave someplace is, you know, you're leaving a little bit of your family. But to know that, that I left it in a better way that I found it was just absolutely rewarding. She's speaking at another vendor conference here at the end of October, and I'm going to surprise her because she said, you know, to me that, you know, being able to, you know, now take on the role that I had taken on and, you know, mentor to the point where now she's out there speaking on operational and revenue cycle issues. So one of my most rewarding experience from a mentor sponsorship perspective.
That is a beautiful example.
Thanks, Terri. Actually, your story, I think, really hits home in terms of something I feel is really important in terms of it's a both and when it comes to mentorship and sponsorship. I don't think one can function without the other. I think without sponsorship, a lot of women leaders can be prepared, but they're unseen. And I think without mentorship, many of us can rise, but we won't necessarily thrive. And the moment that really sticks out for me, to kind of build from your story, Terri, is and you don't also realize that you're being mentored and sponsored in the moment. It's not like you're having this conversation with a leader and you're like, oh, this is what mentorship is. It's often when you reflect back on your career and the moments that have really defined you. And I had come out of grad school. I had started on a very traditional kind of healthcare postgraduate fellowship, manager, director. I had always been in healthcare. And I was really privileged to work with a group of an almost exclusively female leadership team, which, 20 years or so ago just wasn't necessarily common in healthcare, and this was particularly Catholic healthcare. So long story short, I'm in there for about 10 years. The CEO of the organization that I had been at had left and had taken a new job in Chicago. She was stepping into a CEO role, and she was bringing together two Catholic healthcare systems. And she calls me one day and says, Lucy, I want you to come to Chicago and do mergers and acquisitions with me. And I thought she had called the wrong person, I'm pretty sure, because I had never done mergers and acquisitions. I had done strategy, I had done business planning, I had run practices, I was like the eager postgraduate fellowship. But I had to look up what a merger and acquisition really was. I have a twin sister, some of you know her. She has been in the finance space, like she was working for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm like, Amy, what is this? And something kind of tells you that someone is seeing something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I think that's what is at the heart of sponsorship, is opening the doors for someone that otherwise you can't open yourself. So I go to Chicago, and for the next 5 or 6 years, it is by far the most challenging period in my life up to date, but also the most rewarding. And what it did for my career trajectory from that point on, I couldn't have predicted or imagined. And importantly, when I think about what that CEO did for me, not just advocating for me, but standing by me, both privately and publicly. And I think that's really important when you're a sponsor. You're not just advocating for someone, you're actually standing behind them, and you're willing to do it in public when things get tough.
Yeah, very, very true. Kym, do you want to talk about how you were mentored and sponsored into your career?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of opportunities to work with great mentors, and I think to kind of tag on to what Lucy said, oftentimes they were more of an informal relationship that, looking back in hindsight, I can recognize them for what they were as true mentors or sponsors. And I will say, though, that I think one thing that if I had any advice to give on somebody who is looking to be mentored or sponsored and is given that opportunity, I've been in positions like Lucy where I was asked or offered or invited to step into an opportunity that maybe was beyond my reach. And I think if that's truly something that interests you, there's only one answer, and that's hold my beer. Like, you have to be willing to say, this is uncomfortable. This is a stretch. I might fail, right? I might not be successful, but on the flip side, I might knock it out of the park. And so I think when I put on the mentor or sponsorship hat and I identify that person that I feel like is ready, if they hesitate or if they're lacking that self esteem to be able to step up to the plate, then I question my ability to really help them in that regard. So that's kind of my 2 cents there.
I think some of us who are older, like myself, older in my career, I look back on my career and I think, oh my God, I was so darn lucky, and that person was so generous. And I think in this arena that we have today in healthcare, especially women organizations and conferences like this, we recognize the importance of that, and there's more formal opportunities to arrange for that and to select people and to recommend people and to really create a relationship. It wasn't like that when I was coming up. I just feel so fortunate for the opportunities that I was given in the circumstances that I, feel like I tripped into, thankfully. What are the systems or programs, are they formal or informal, that you guys think are best, that work best within healthcare systems and organizations to ensure that these opportunities are not left to chance?
Great question. I totally agree that we benefit today from more formal kind of development programs. I think the best programs are structured but flexible. Like, you shouldn't necessarily leave mentorship and sponsorship to chance. Like, you shouldn't be making it up as you go, maybe. But also, it doesn't need to be a 12-page document that you're just checking the box to check the box. I think, it feels very transactional in that way, and connection and authenticity, and we've talked about it before earlier today, really matter. At St. Luke's, we have a formal leadership development program that pairs high potential leaders with an executive. And they are expected to be both a mentor and a sponsor. And so it is intentional in that you're not just advising someone to coach them, to listen, or kind of connect them, but you're actually advocating and standing behind them. I think the other thing that works is transparency. When I think about some of the shared governance or the structures that I have built, and the most recent one is with a system-wide cancer care program, being intentional about women leadership on the physician as well as the administration side, and putting them in at the table with influence and decision-making ability. So it's both the program itself as well as the opportunities that you give.
At the University of Arkansas, there is a formal program. It's ran by the Little Rock campus of the university. To get in, you have to be recommended. So I was recommended from the CFO, but I'm sure others were. Those high executives are recommending these individuals and to go through the program. And then I think, we've been a little intentional as well to express our, appreciation for being able to take the course and kind of connect those dots from the things that we've learned, and call them out, that program supported, this project or decision or, whatever. that you're doing. I think what I do personally to take it down a level to my own team is, I try to leverage the performance reviews as much as possible, to get down to, that frontline worker, ask them to, during that conversation, identify at least 1 to 3 professional development goals. And then I sit with my leadership team, we take all those goals, put them on a spreadsheet, and part of my one-on-ones with those leaders is, okay, did you get Susie that opportunity that Susie asked to do? To make sure that we are, again, developing that next leader. And again, it contributes to engagement, it contributes to retention, and job satisfaction and things to let our team members know that, we hear you and we want to support you in your career, because healthcare, it is a journey. I mean, and it can be a long journey. But those are some of the things that I have had the privilege to take advantage of, as well as the opportunities that I try to create for my own team.
It leaves nothing to chance too, which is really important.
Yep.
How about you, Kym?
I think I would concur that formal programs are beneficial, and I think having successful mentor-mentee relationships is a big part of that is fit. There has to be chemistry between the two. I have mentors that I have retained my connection with even after they've retired, and I have some who, once the formal program ended, we never spoke again because we just didn't make that connection. But I think that mentoring goes beyond just leadership. Like, it's great to look for your next leaders, but I think when we look at the state of the healthcare workforce challenges, and this is the perspective of a CEO, so I'm looking at clinical and non-clinical, I'm really looking at how do I keep people working for me and happy and growing. And so I'm constantly looking at every level of my organization. So I'm talking to my EBS staff saying, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to be a tech? Do you want to be a rad tech? Do you want to be a surgical tech? Let's talk about what that looks like. Let's get you job shadowing. Let's get you in there. I mean, I think every single layer within an organization, whether you're in a clinical department, revenue cycle, or otherwise, there's mentoring opportunities at every single level. And I think as leaders, we have to be aware of that and constantly look into how we support our teams.
Yeah. Very good point. I once mentored somebody out of like the best physician assistant I've ever had into an IT job, which she is still in and loves, but it's the risk you take when you are helping somebody in their career and find their next great opportunity and to really find joy in their lives. What advice would you give women who are already in the door but struggling with that next great leadership opportunity?
I would say, and this might come off sounding wrong, but if for those females who feel like they're hitting a ceiling, you gotta think like a man. Like, I have daughters, I have all daughters, and we talk about their careers, and we talk about different roles, and they say, well, I only meet these 2 criteria, I don't meet these 2. And I say, so what? Like, so what? What happens if you get that job and you grow into it? It's like, my favorite thing to say is fake it till you make it. And that's really uncomfortable for a lot of women. And the number one thing that could motivate me when I was growing up through my career was somebody to tell me no, or you're not ready. And I know we talked about the you're not ready conversation, but there was nothing that was gonna light a fire under me more than somebody telling me you're not ready, because I was gonna prove them wrong. It was like, hold my beer while I make this happen. And so I would say, don't sit back and wait for it to happen for you or wait for somebody else to pave that way. Make it happen. You gotta be part of that process. It's an active process. Rosie?
Yeah, I totally agree with Kym. I think that readiness is rarely a feeling, it's a decision that you have to make. And so don't wait to be 100% prepared. Growth happens in the stretch. I also think that relationships matter. Leadership or any kind of next step in your career is not a solo sport, particularly in healthcare. So I think that those who thrive build relationships across the system. And then finally, and directly to Kym's point, don't be afraid to ask for sponsorship. It's not selfish, it's pretty strategic, and it's only awkward if someone says no, I suppose, but you're not only kind of advocating for yourself, but you're also shaping healthcare and shaping the industry for the next generation of leaders and women. So you're kind of paying it forward by doing something for yourself too.
I think they've said, I mean, some of the notes that I wrote down, being a self-advocate. I mean, I think you don't wait for somebody to do it for you. Get up there and do it yourself. I mean, identify your goals. Again, seek out those relationships that you can leverage to get to that next level. Seek out influential people, and develop confidence. I think that in itself can open up some doors. If we're good at what we do, but we need to speak confidently about it to get that attention.
What common barriers do you see that are preventing women in healthcare from fully benefiting from sponsorship or mentorship, but probably sponsorship more? And how can we assist with that? How can we help remove those?
I think from it's that opportunity. I mean, just getting that seat at the table. I know I purposefully leverage my position to create a seat next to me when I'm at that table. I've got a new director of revenue integrity who's a nurse, never done revenue integrity before. But again, taking those transferable skills and building her into, and she's just got good leadership, very good at, creating opportunities for her teams and things. And I have a weekly meeting with my, C-suite. And instead of being the intermediary to what's going on in my department, I'm bringing along my leaders to have that direct conversation with those C-suite, CEO, CFO, COO, CMO, to tell their story, to start to build that credibility that I had the opportunity to build. So just creating that, if you're at the table, create a seat next to you at that table.
And also lay a foundation for somebody who's going to join you there, it sounds like you're saying.
Oh, yeah, and hopefully, not join me, hopefully like I did with my other employee, just a succession plan. Then, it kind of takes the pressure off of me, that I can ask, hey, I got something to do, can you cover this for me? And I can do other things and know that the business is being taken care of.
I think I would agree with all of that. I think that and we talked about this already, but you have to be willing to ask, right? Somebody has to know that you want to be in that position to then offer you that opportunity, and you have to be willing to be uncomfortable, and again, you have to be willing to fail. I have this, we all learn every single day, and I still learn every single day, even though I feel like I've been in healthcare forever and I've worked in every position imaginable. But I have this great CFO who has no shame, and it teaches me more about myself than anything else when we're negotiating things with big vendors, because we'll sit there and I feel like we're getting a phenomenal deal, like we're winning in this negotiation, and he'll ask for more. And I'll inwardly cringe because I feel like it's too much. Like, we're asking for too much. And 9 times out of 10, he gets it, or he gets part of it. And it just goes to show you don't know until you push those boundaries. And I think we all have to be willing, whether it's in those negotiations or you're professional life, you have to be willing and comfortable with pushing those boundaries, because it can feel really uncomfortable, but you don't know unless you ask for it. So
That is so well said, Kym. And the flip side, in the same way that many leaders feel like they have to be fully ready to kind of be sponsored, there are times when sponsors feel like, well, I'm going to wait until that person's really ready because my reputation, my credibility is on the line if something, goes awry. And so I think there's this opportunity to kind of normalize like imperfection and create psychological safety for both that person who's being sponsored as well as the person who's sponsoring, because the connection matters, and you're both taking a chance to invest in the same way that Kym just said. You learn, they learn, but there's risk in there, and I think sometimes that holds people back from being like, I'm willing to put myself out there.
Have you guys heard that statistic about men typically apply for jobs that they're not entirely qualified for, whereas women like to tick the boxes. So we like to make sure that we have every one of those skills before we submit a resume. Yeah, and we hold ourselves back in that way in some ways. As senior leaders, you are both mentees and mentors. How do you balance continuing your own growth while assisting others with theirs?
Go ahead.
I'll be honest, I think one of the things that has been a challenge for me in my career is the higher up you go in your career, the less opportunity there is for that mentorship. So I have the opportunity to connect with my colleagues, but truly developing that mentor-mentee relationship where I'm the mentee, at least in a formal way, because there's less and less people above you, right? So I have board members, but they're not really going to serve as my mentors. And so, and I love to be that mentor, but lately what I have, the way that I've been getting that mentorship is I try and find something that I can learn from the people that I'm mentoring. So I'm not a formal mentee, but I can learn from anybody, anything from anybody. Somebody has something that if I'm paying attention, I can take something away, even if this is what I don't want to do, right? As opposed to this is what I want to do. So that's been probably, as I've worked my way up the ladder, so to speak, that's been the biggest challenge for me personally. And that saying of it's lonely at the top, there's some truth to that for sure. But we all have an opportunity to learn from everybody else.
Yeah, I think it just, as you said, recognizing, those opportunities. I have a great CFO, and I'm kind of new. We're just still kind of getting to know each other. I've only been at Arkansas a little over 2 years, but again, I want to be the best that I can be, and kind of utilizing or encouraging her mentorship and sponsorship, kind of without her knowing, using my, performance review to tell her the things that I want to do. I kind of, rate yourself at the top to open up the conversation with her to say, okay, this is where I want to be. How do I get there? What's missing? What do I need to do next to get to that next level? And then, just asking for those opportunities to have a seat at that table with the executives to, educate. And that's been, a biggest part of my job here at Arkansas. One of the things I was asked to do was integrate revenue cycle into the organization, because I think that, that's been a piece that's missing, and it has been an interesting and rewarding, journey to integrate revenue cycle in an organization where, they have no idea what a late charge is. The physician, They have no idea, why am I not making enough money? Well, your payer mix, what's a payer mix? I mean, so it's been interesting. And again, listening, because you never know what you can learn by just listening to somebody. So just remaining open.
Yeah, good point. One of the things I've discovered later in my late life is that the relationships, both mentee and mentor, don't have to be like whole career. They're like, sometimes I go to somebody and I say, I want to learn this, and I think you can help me with that. Or I see something in somebody and I say, you are onto something and I want to help you develop that. And one of the things I've taken on this year is learning AI, as a business advocate. I want to learn how to build it in my office and do things for me so I can pay attention to other things. And I've been reaching out to people saying, I think you can help me with that. And they have. And recognizing that it doesn't have to be a whole career wide or a deep relationship. It can be single skill also. How should organizations measure the success of these relationships?
Sure, I'll start. I think organizations can start maybe by just looking at the number of women that are advancing through their careers, who are in places of leadership, who are within their governance structures chairing conversations. And, it has to be more than who signed up for a mentorship program. Because what really matters is how are we then supporting, advising, advocating, and translating that into real opportunities for those women, for those leaders, or for those team members. I don't think that, I also think that you can look at who you're surrounding yourself with and who you're bringing to the table with real influence. I think sponsors sometimes have to look beyond, they remind me of myself, and look at diverse perspectives to bring to the table. Like, I have a twin sister. I don't need another me at a conversation, right? I need thought partners that we can collectively learn and grow together, and giving them voice and influence, not just to be like the token female leader at a meeting, which, if you've been in healthcare long enough, there were times where that was your role to be invited to. So I think you could start by looking at who are your women leaders, how are they advancing, and how are they showing up and representing some of your leadership teams and your governance structures.
And I think just, how effective they are bringing the people below them along as well. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's a great measure of, how that opportunity resonated with that woman leader. How are they passing that along? So to train the next one to do the same for the next one.
Yeah, I would say with that whole paying it forward perspective, it's, we want everybody in our organization to have a career path, or to be thinking about a career path. And it's okay if that career path is, I want to be doing this in 10 years, but I want to be the best person in the department or the highest producer. We just want you to think about what works for you and where you want to go. And so we measure that in our employee engagement survey. There's nothing more compelling than having a widely happy staff that feel like they're supported and have the tools that they need and the direction and the support and the guidance to navigate through their career. And so we talk to our staff. It's part of our leadership expectations, and then we measure that every single year.
I've always felt like looking at succession planning, the second I take a job, I have to figure out what my exit strategy is. And same with people, when you hire somebody into a position, where are they going next? Like, you have to know enough about them to be able to, ask them, help them determine that, and then think about what resources they're going to need to get there. So how do we as leaders, all of us in this room, guarantee that we are cultivating the next generation of leaders?
Well, I think it's through that dialogue and understanding what their personal goals are, and you have to be willing to invest in your teams. And even if that means you know that high performer is going to leave your organization because they are ready for that next step, but you don't have that opportunity for them, if you support them down that path and help them achieve those goals, you leave that door open for them to then turn around and come back and re-enter your organization at some time in the future. And we see a lot of that in our organization. And I personally would rather have somebody be personally and professionally fulfilled and having to leave my organization to achieve that than to stay and be unhappy. And so I think you really have to engage with your staff beyond the superficial and have programs and pathways and tools to be able to support them to achieve whatever those goals are, and it's different for everybody.
I think I mean, I put it on my resume, how many people that I did get promoted, or how many people that, through our interaction, our time together, got that higher job that they were seeking. And again, being very intentional about creating those opportunities for your team. I think that's the best way that you can fulfill that.
Yeah, I totally agree with Kym and Terri, and I think intentionality is something that is kind of a theme. I think as leaders, we have a little bit of an obligation to do more than just like holding the door open for somebody. How do you help them kind of take that step through? Because the experiences that we've all benefited from, and as well as many of you, that's how you pay it forward. And I think it's through the intentionality, through the dialogue, and through making a conscious commitment, and importantly, creating capacity within your leadership role to do this work and to do it well. Because it takes time to develop, to sponsor, to mentor, and to be sponsored or mentored. So.
Very nice. Does anyone want to talk about their most meaningful mentor or mentee relationship?
Mentors come from all areas of your life, and by far, my biggest mentor was my dad, and he very much taught me to be perfectly imperfect, I think, and I remember a couple of years ago, I had a leader who, like a senior leader, who walked into my office and was like bawling and sat down and told me that she had made a mistake, like a really impactful mistake. I managed about $1.5 billion in revenue, and it was like significant, right? Where the first thing that came to mind was Mike Tyson's quote, "Everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face." And I felt like I got punched in the face, and like I'm human, so I'm getting anxious, I'm kind of breaking down inside, I'm kind of getting angry because, oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? You just kind of, this is really, really bad. And then, like, for whatever reason, I remembered my dad, and he passed away a couple years ago, but I remember asking him, like, why in those moments of my life were I so messed up? And luckily there were only a few. He never got mad. And his response to me at the time was, "Oh, Lou, my job is not to make you feel any worse than you're already making yourself feel. It's to make you feel loved." And in that moment, I knew my role as a leader wasn't to let all of these emotions kind of come out. It was to let her know that she was loved and we were going to work through this. And so in that moment, de-escalating the situation, letting her know that let's talk about this, let's figure out a pathway forward. And we did. It was not without consequences. It wasn't like it all of a sudden went from devastation to like, rainbows and unicorns or anything. But we were able to figure out a pathway. And I think just giving someone that space to feel safe in that moment. And I'll never forget my dad for that wisdom.
Great piece of advice. That's great. Anyone else?
I don't have a single individual that I can point to, but I can without a doubt say I've had numerous people who've served that role, whether it's small durations or large tenured capacity, who've helped me become the leader that I am today and opened doors for me and gave me a soft landing when I fell and picked me up and brushed me off and pushed me right back out the door to get right back at it again. And again, I think you have those relationships with people in your professional career and you don't really recognize them, unfortunately, until much later in your career when you look back and reflect. And I just hope everybody in this room has more than one of those individuals that support you in that capacity, because it's extremely beneficial. Take advantage of them when you have them.
Very good. I'd love to open it up for people to talk about their own experiences with mentoring or sponsoring, or questions that you might have about mentoring and sponsoring.
One of the statements that Terri mentioned that resonated with me was using the performance evaluation and asking them, okay, 3 areas, and then taking that information back, on putting it on a spreadsheet. And that to me is like, wow, now that is perfect, because we have tangible numbers and we can actually follow up and see how we're doing in actually bettering our employees.
Yeah, it was a great exercise too to, with my leadership team, to get creative on, okay, how can we create those opportunities for the staff? And we had, several programs, we had, we called it the marketplace, and, there's lots of projects going on in the organization, and, just exposing something to the process or being part of the process. I think that was one of the things that made our SBO most successful, is the workflows were built by my team members. I taught my team members to be, self-directed. We're all adults. I don't have time to babysit you. If you were self-employed, what would you? This is your paycheck. What are you? How are you going to run your business? So, letting people have opportunities. I found one of my team members who I hired to be a customer service rep was so analytical. And then as a leadership team, we said, oh my gosh, let's create a position for an analyst on our team and leverage this person to do something that she likes to do and lift her up, to that position. And that's what we did. So just understanding, what they want, or, even some of those hidden, talents, and how can we leverage them, just went a long way with the team.
Other questions?
Yeah. I had a question, and I appreciate all of you sharing the experiences that you've had. I was wondering from a different perspective, that what happened when you did identify someone and sponsored them, or tried to help them with their career, and it didn't work out. Are there patterns there or lessons learned that would be helpful to know about why it didn't?
Yeah, I had one really early on in my career. It was my first lesson of, just because somebody has a great technical skill set doesn't mean they're going to be a good leader. And so I worked for a national payer, my first foray into revenue cycle, and I had an individual who had all of the knowledge in her head, and she was the go-to for her colleagues for answers. And so for me, the natural progression was to make her a supervisor, and which we did, and she failed miserably, which means I failed miserably. I think my second lesson in that is you have to own it. When you fail, you have to own it, me personally, and that's a tough pill to swallow as a young green leader, but it's the right example to set for your staff. And I mean, we both moved on. We put her in a better role, an analyst role, something that she was the knowledge holder, but she wasn't responsible for managing people, which she went on to excel at. And I, took my little beating in my leader's office about, this is what I learned from this experience. I promise I'll think about this a little bit differently in the future. But again, that was one of those mentors that gave me space to fail and let me learn from it and let me grow from it. So that's one of my examples.
Of course.
How did the employee take it that went from supervisor to analyst, and how did you get them comfortable with that?
She was really struggling with the people management piece of it. And sometimes when you're in those positions that you're struggling with, you can't see the forest through the trees. And that's where she was at. So she wanted to be successful because failure to her was unthinkable. And so we had to really sit down and have that conversation of, this is why this isn't working, but it doesn't mean you're not a good person, or it doesn't mean you don't have good skill sets, or it doesn't mean you're not a exceptional resource for this group. We just need to structure how you provide that knowledge to these individuals differently. And the weight that was removed from her when we changed her position was visible. And she later came and said, thank you. That was the hardest thing that I probably had to work through. I felt like I was a failure. But recognizing that I could be successful, just having it look a little bit different was eye-opening for her. So it was a very uncomfortable conversation because I had promoted her and then I had to basically demote her. But everybody involved, I think, ended up in a much better place.
Other questions?
I have a question. Thanks, Jana. All four of you.
You got there first.
All four of you are very established individuals in the industry and in your careers. Lucy, you have 1,500 employees?
Physicians, yeah.
Oh, physicians, right. That's another bear. As you said, Jana, you went from orthopedics to anesthesia, so you went from children to grown-ups or something like that. But
Toddlers.
oh yeah, toddlers, my bad. But my question is more around how do you find time to continually, you're a CEO, you're a VP of a very large health system. Terri, you went from working in high school all the way to UAMS as the Chancellor, VP. Now what's your career path from here, and how are you still growing?
I think, well, I'm, again, an older adult. For me, it is, I approach it, I got to continue to stay relevant, to keep my job. I've worked hard to get here, but, that was an effort in itself. I think it is a bigger effort to stay there, to stay relevant, to show the value you're creating, help your team members, that succession planning and, everything that you create that, that seat next to you at the table. But for me is, what effort do I need to put into this to continue to do what I love to do?
I think you nailed it, Terri. Staying relevant is, trying not to get complacent in your role, even if you do or don't aspire to higher leadership roles, you can easily stretch within your current role and continue to learn. And healthcare, it presents no shortage of challenges on a daily basis to grow and learn and try and fail. And so stretching within the current role is something I spend a lot of time on. I also ask for a lot of feedback. Good, bad, and ugly, I suppose. Feedback's a gift most of the time, I'd like to say. And then the other thing, something that brings me so much joy, is developing the team. I'm actually pretty proud that if I won the lottery tomorrow, make sure I get my ticket, any one of my COOs could step into my role, and it would be seamless. And that just brings a lot of joy. So I think you find joy within your current role, and you find the ways to stay relevant and continue to stretch yourself and grow.
I think for me, I manage my career by managing a value equation. And so I have to feel like I'm contributing equal to what I'm gaining, not financially, but just from a satisfaction and career development perspective in a role. And once those aren't equal anymore, then that's when I tend to feel like I'm ready for something else. So I want to feel relevant. I want to feel like I'm contributing. I want to feel like I'm creating something, supporting my team. But I also need to feel like I'm also continuing to develop and grow. And you can foster that and find that to some degree. And I'm actually doing that now in this current role through state and federal advocacy, which is a whole other animal. But then at some point when they're unequal, for me, that's when there's new opportunities somewhere else.
That is such a good point. It's also the value add and the personal joy and value you receive and give to an organization also matters a lot where your organization is going. If you're working for an organization that's not growing like you are, I'm a lifelong learner, so these kinds of things are really important to me. And I look at my organization and I think, these are actually questions that we've had a lot of recently because we're going through a lot of change. Where are we going? Like, are we going forward? Are we going backward? Are we creating value for our members? Are we losing people? Why are we losing them? Are we gaining people? Why are we gaining them? And then being able to measure what I'm bringing to the organization and what I'm getting from it in the same way. And does this all work for all of us? Like I am always looking for opportunities of bringing more value to my organization, and which is why, I took on GPTs this year. Like, that's something that's really important, and I think it's going to save us a lot of money in the end. But that's a heavy lift, like to go out and learn all that stuff, and there's not a lot of people who are really experts at it right now. But what's my organization delivering back to me that I'm, where it's mutual and beneficial? And that's something that I think you always have to look at.
Yeah, it's just that personal, value statement for yourself, I guess. My side hustle, I teach at the University of San Diego Extended Studies Revenue Cycle Certificate Program. And just to know, we partnered with, UCSD and the associating hospitals that a preferred qualification for a candidate, an applicant, would be to have completed that course and receive that certification, so now they know the knowledge level of the person that is coming into that position. And just, when my students, email me and say, Terri, I got a job. I mean, just like, I think I get more excited than they do, I think, sometimes, to know that you've had that impact on somebody's life. Now now they're on their path to their career, and they can take care of their family and things like that. So it's just that personal value statement that I think is most meaningful to me.
Over here? I can deliver mine. He's faster. He's young.
So I would like to share a good mentorship, and this is actually about Marnie, who is my boss. So Marnie is the CFO in South Puget Sound for Providence now and has been for a little over a year. I have been in my current role as the Revenue Integrity Manager for over 10 years. And one of my staff that's here with me today can attest that I jokingly used to say, I'm not a Revenue Integrity Manager, I'm a firefighter. Because I wasn't involved in everything. And it would be an afterthought. Oh, we bought this clinic, we did this, we put this into place, we made these changes. How do you bill for that, Rachel? And by the way, we did this in January and today's February or March or April. And Marnie is so different in that. Marnie is very quick to say, wait a second, what's the revenue component and where is Rachel involved in this? And even when she interviewed with us, because I was part of the interview panel, interviewing several CFOs, one of the things she made clear to all of us in the leadership team there is, as a role of a CFO, I'm not here to be your boss if I get the job. I'm here to support you and get what you need and help you succeed. And even in our one-on-one check-ins, that's the first thing she says, what can I do to help you? And it has been a huge change for me in my career of 14 years now being within the department that I'm in. And to have that support, I mean, I sit on strategy calls. I know of very confidential things in the works, like we're thinking about doing something. What are your thoughts? You know, and so it's so refreshing to have that and to have a mentor that gives you a value add for yourself is a major difference in a leader.
That is great.
That is great.
Other questions, comments? They're all looking at you now.
Actually, the irony is, like, we want to share about what you just said about Marnie.
Evidently, they felt it in the room. I was sitting here thinking, I talked to Marnie right after she did that interview because she did not intend to make the change. She's like, I'm with her. Jessica was with me as well. And she said, I was not going to. I just wanted to, keep my options open. This looked like a good opportunity. She really enjoyed the time she had at Providence prior. Was not going to make the change. She gets off the call. She calls, we're with her. She goes, that's right. We were at Salishan we were somewhere, anywho. And she came to the room. She goes, so I just had that interview. Yeah, I'm going to take that job. I'm going to have that job. I loved the people that I interviewed with, and they said all the things that I feel like I'm missing currently. Just so you know, in case you hadn't told you.
That's better than being a fly on the wall.
Yeah,
Anyone?
the only other thing I was just gonna say is that, is that
each one of you, I think that have been in a lot of our auras before, and your mentorship and sponsorship, you may not realize that, Kym Clift from, you said 20 years ago, you were at Peace Health, your name has always been there. It's so you had that mentorship and sponsorship for people that didn't even know that you probably didn't know we existed in some sense or form, and the same thing for Lucy and also for you, Terri and Jana. And so I just think it's so nice to hear what you've shared with us today. So thank you so much, and thanks for being mentors and sponsors and not even knowing personally to me. So thank you for that.
I love that.
Thanks,
That's
Kelly.
fantastic, because I've worked with a lot of people over the course of my career, and I've worked with a lot of people. Some of us have been in healthcare for a really long time, and I've worked with a lot of people, and I have those, ghosts in my world of people who I saw but didn't see me, or I didn't think saw me, and so, I have to think, we all have to think that those exist too, and so there's nothing more profound than knowing that you made a lasting impression, or supported somebody inadvertently, and helped somebody along the way. That's, I think, the sign of a really great career, when you leave those pebbles behind you.
It's so true. Does anybody ever, like when you log in on LinkedIn and you look at who's been looking at you and it's a ghost from your past and you think, they're checking on me, or that is somebody that I mentored, and it's like the whispers from the past that come back. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
In the spirit of ghosts, I ended up in the emergency room about a year ago from food poisoning. And I live in Southwest Washington, so I went to the Peace Health emergency room from Southwest Washington Medical Center and walked in, was not feeling particularly well, and the person that checked me in, she's right in the ER and gives me a big hug, and I was like, what is going on? And she said, Kathleen Porter. And I said, yeah. And she said, you don't remember me? And I said, I'm very ill. So I said, well, I'm not feeling so great. And she said, Jessica, and she used her last name. And I said, I'm so sorry, I don't remember you. And she said, my name before I got married was, Jessica, I'm not gonna say her last name. And she said, you gave me, I was a PCR checking in patients, and you created a job that made me the QA manager for incoming phone calls for patient access reps. And I said, oh, yeah, Jessica, I remember you. And she goes, and then you fired me a year later because you said I wanted to be a nurse. And she said, you basically got me into nursing school, and then you fired me so I wouldn't keep at my old job. And she said, I'm a nurse. And I was able to take care of my family, made enough money. And she said, and now I'm volunteer at the nursing school. I try to mentor others, and it was just one of those moments. I had to tell that story because the ghost, and it was just so beautiful. And like she's like, I'm gonna get you taken care of. We're gonna get you in and out. I'm like, okay, no, you definitely cannot treat me any different. But it was a beautiful story. So
That
I know
is so
many
great.
of us, a lot of those people.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody.
Has anybody else gotten a call from somebody they once fired thanking them for the privilege? I've had that happen once or twice. Well, thank you guys so much. This is really a topic that is so meaningful for me, for all of us, and we really appreciate your questions, comments, and staying with us.